I'm Jay Horton. I make movies that make money. This is how. Today, I'm taking you through the production and distribution of one of my ultimately most successful films, which also happens to be one of my cheapest films, Trap. To help me out, I've enlisted the help of producer Robert Bravo, and stick around towards the end and I'll tell you how this little film that I couldn't even find initial distribution for ended up making money. Today I'm sitting here with the producer of my third movie, which was Trap, Robert Bravo. How you doing, Robert?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm pretty good. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you initially got involved with Trap.
I didn't have any intention of getting into the film industry. I kind of fell into it. I met you. We were working together at a little coffee shop.
A lot of people will not have heard of this coffee shop. It's a small thing. It's called Starbucks.
Yeah, it's very boutique. But you were this big movie buff, and we got to talking. You had a film you were working on called Edges of Darkness at the time. I kind of just stumbled into it. I did a little bit of help at the very end of Edges of Darkness, and we got along well. We had a good rapport. And the next thing I knew, we were shooting Trap, and literally every other weekend we would film. So one weekend I'd take my paycheck and we'd film a scene, and the next weekend I'd take my paycheck and be a responsible adult. That was how we made Trap happen.
Yeah. It's like, take me through the producing process on Trap. Like, how did we put that together? What was the schedule like?
It was interesting. We didn't have the longest pre-production. I think there was kind of a, people tell us we can't do this because we haven't gone to film school and I'm just a punk kid. And a lot of it, I feel like we were proving them wrong. Well, you had gone to film school. I had.
Kinda, yeah.
It started off as conversations. I have this really cool idea. And then one day a script appeared, and I think, slowly the script appeared. But it was also a really great script. I think a decision was made to pull the trigger. Casting was really fun. We found Alan Parada and Ashton through Space Station Casting.
I don't even think that's still around anymore, is it?
It's not in the same location. It's not there, but they have a new building. I actually did a casting thing with them last year.
Oh, okay. So Space Station is still a thing. All right. That's cool.
Yeah. And from there, it sort of just fell together, and it was really bootstraps. You had a friend, Blaine, who literally Blaine and Robert Kitchen built our jib from spare wood.
Oh, yeah. I remember the jib. Yeah.
And I still say that's one of the best jibs I've used 10 years later.
I mean, it looked, I'm going to see if I can find a picture of it. I know I at least have one from Monsters in the Woods, because we used it basically for a prop on that movie.
Yeah.
But I think I still have it. I mean, it looks ridiculous. It was made out of like 2x4s and like, it looks ghetto as hell, but it worked.
Trap is what everyone gives you you can't do it. Trap is what happens when someone says you can't do it and you say, watch me. It was not as stressful as one would assume. I was like a 23-year-old kid trying to produce a feature. Maybe it wasn't stressful because I was too dumb to realize how scared I should have been.
Man, I forget how young you were when we started. I still, when I think back on it, I think of you like 2 years ago, it's been 10 years now.
It's hard to think, we've known each other that long, but I've been doing this that long. I got into special effects on the feature after that, and I haven't turned back since.
So let's talk a little bit about the casting process. So we went to Space Station. Like, how did that work? Like, roughly how much were we paying for it? How many actors did we see? Like, that kind of stuff.
I don't remember what we paid for casting. I think it's like $20 or $30 an hour. It may not even be that much.
Yeah, I don't really recall. I believe it was something like, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was like $10 an hour.
It wasn't expensive, and we didn't have like the luxury weekend suite or anything.
Yeah, no, we had this little like 20 by 20, like, small room. There's basically enough room for like me, you, the camera, and like an actor.
Yeah, it was big enough to be professional. Like,
yeah.
You wouldn't have known that we were trying to bootstrap our way through. We were legit.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing about casting. Like, if people are going to do, a little indie movie, take all the steps you can to legitimize yourself a little bit more. So, don't do your casting out of your living room, get a place. They're not that expensive.
Yeah. The more your cast and crew respect you early on, the more they will respect you throughout, because you've established yeah, you may not have all the money in the world, but you have a good head on your shoulder. You have an understanding of the industry,
Right.
and you have an understanding and an appreciation of them. Because if I ask an actress to come to my house for a casting call, it's skeezy to begin with,
Yeah.
but she's going to look at this project and be like, eh. Whereas if we're going to a legitimate place, I mean, Space Station, real movies cast there all the time. And when I say real movies, budgeted movies. I'm
Yeah.
not trap
Yeah,
buzzard.
we're not talking like Paramount. They got their own thing, but like independent movies produced at, like $500,000 or
Yeah,
$250,000. People with cast with people that you'd recognize.
exactly. Yeah. I worked with a couple of names and we were talking about Space Station recently. The Jazzercise, there was this awful Jazzercise place next door. Can I tell the story?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead. Was
All
that
right.
on Trap?
That was on Trap. That was,
Okay, yeah, I didn't remember.
but we call this actor in to start as soon as he walks into the building. In the background, you hear it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and for the next like 40 minutes, you've got like this like cardio gym going off, and this guy's like, but this guy's like, there'll be distractions on set. There's distractions here. I can roll with it. He starts doing a really, really professional run through. And then all of a sudden, the guy he's reading against, his phone rings. And in the middle of the audition, he picks up his phone, he answers it, and he starts talking. And then Elaine's just sitting there like, I think he was staying in character even. I think he was acting like,
yeah, he never broke. He never broke character. It was pretty funny.
I think he would have been good for the role either way, but it was seeing how he flew with that, because there's nothing more chaotic than a low budget film.
Yeah, it's something that I say all the time. Like when you're casting a micro budget movie, and this was definitely a micro budget movie, like it's not just about finding good cast. Now you want good cast, but you need a particular type of good, because there are good actors that cannot handle a 5 day shoot, a 90-page script shot in 5 days, or whatever it is. I've on bigger sets, like I was working on another low budget movie several years later, and by low budget it was it was much bigger than this. We had some name talent, but we were still having to shoot very fast, and there was a name actor in it who you definitely recognize, but I won't say their name. But this person completely like broke down over the speed of which we had to shoot. They're used to camera rehearsal, blocking rehearsal, then shoot. On a small indie, like you might get a camera rehearsal, you might get a blocking rehearsal, but you're most likely not going to get both, and you're definitely not going to get any more than 3 takes.
That's when the director very nicely says, "Oh no, we're rolling rehearsals."
Yes, rolling rehearsals.
One is a rehearsal.
Right. That was probably the biggest budgeted production I'd ever been on, that I'd ever directed.
I mean, it was fun. It was tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you were saying, the way Alan handled, or Elaine, the way he handled those distractions, like we're like, okay, he's got chops, and we know he can roll with like whatever happens on set. So boom, he got the part.
He blew it away, with the exception of having to change one line in the script.
Oh yeah.
For about half an hour, he tried to pronounce the word job, and it kept coming out jib.
No, it was gig.
Gig.
Yeah, the line was like, "How did you get this gig?" And he just he's French, and he couldn't get the pronunciation right, and we ended up telling him just to do it the way he was doing it, and then we had the other actor kind of ad-libbed and correct him. They were like, "It's jib, it's jib," and just kind of we went with it, used it. Yeah.
He's a hell of a lot fitter than I am, that's for sure.
Oh shit, yeah. I mean, he was then, he is now. That like at the time, like I felt pretty fit. Like I was working out all the time. Like I was like, oh, I look pretty good. And then I was looking back on some of those set pictures, like me next to him, next to the sound guy, and like they both look way better than me. I'm like, that's why as a director, that's my never take pictures with your cast. They're always going to be better looking than you. They're always going to make you look bad. So when we got to set, do you remember, and we don't have to talk about where it came from or anything like that, but do you remember like the overall budget, what it was?
I think when all is said and done, I think we might have spent around $7,000.
What was it that much? I usually tell people 4 or 5. That's what I remember, but am I just remembering it completely incorrectly?
Well, it was supposed to be 4 or 5K. The one lesson I learned on this that I never went away is it's not the big budget stuff that gets you. It's the little things. It's
Yeah. Yeah,
100,000.
yeah. Adds up.
Do you remember what we actually went over budget on not during post, but during production itself?
Was it food?
We spent $500 over budget. And we went over our books, over our books, over our books. Nothing wrong. Coffee creamer. We
Coffee
were buying,
creamer.
we were buying those Coffee Mate little creamers. We were spending like 40 bucks a day or 50 bucks a day. Coffee creamers are what put us over budget.
There's a good lesson in that.
It's the total nothings that get you.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I honestly didn't remember. I knew we were originally around 4, and then I thought maybe we went a little over 5, but seven sounds, yeah, I believe it.
I might be going too high too. So for the sake of argument, let's split the difference. Say it was 6.
Okay. So if you're out there, regardless of what IMDb says, the movie cost $6,000. Okay, great. Fair enough. So, all right, the coffee creamers.
And the other thing, if you're talking to low budget producers and whatnot, our biggest problem and the reason why we don't know exactly what the numbers is when it comes to incidentals,
we weren't keeping track.
So, couple $100 here, $10 there, $20 there. All of a sudden you're like, well, all our petty cash is gone. And that's, that's what happens.
Right. And we don't know where it went or what. All we know is that we need a little bit more.
Yeah. Somewhere there should be an envelope with a receipt in it.
Right. And there's not necessarily. Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, even on subsequent movies, like, the bookkeeping side of producing has always been my weakest thing. If I wouldn't have had producers doing it, like on Death Day, I wouldn't know where any of that money went.
Now I cheat. As soon as I get a receipt, I put it in my phone. I email it to a receipt folder. I don't have to worry about it. It's digitized. All I have to do is type in the name of the movie. Receipts.
That's a good idea. Now, if I remember right, this was a 6-day shoot total?
Probably.
Like I think we did 4 or 5 days at Alonzo's. And then we did the 1 day at Kitchens, and then we did the 1 day at my apartment in downtown Burbank. So actually, and we did the 1 day in Malibu. I forgot about that.
What was the Malibu day?
We did the exteriors of the cabin, because remember the cabin that we shot the movie in was actually a small apartment in like downtown Hollywood, like Hollywood. So the exteriors, of course, didn't work for this secluded place. So we had a friend that had a cabin up in
that's right.
Not Malibu, but somewhere close to Malibu. So actually, I think there were 7 like kind of full days, and then like that Malibu day was like we basically just went up there for 3 or 4 hours, shot the cabin, shot Alonzo walking back and forth to the car. I don't even think Alan shot anything out there, or Ashton. It was pretty much just Alonzo. I think officially it was 5 days at the main location, 1 day at Kitchen's house where we did the opening sequence, and then 1 day at my place, which doubled for Anna Marie's apartment, and we shot at the Starbucks there. Haha, Starbucks, come get us. Come get us, Starbucks. We shot there. No location release. At the time, I was still working there part-time, so I was like, I just talked to the manager. I was like, hey, she's like, just don't bug anybody that's eating. We were like, okay. So it was basically a 7-day shoot. We shot it for $6,000. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, do you remember shooting the sex scene?
Yes.
Okay. From your perspective, let's talk about like how we did it and maybe what we could have done differently.
It's actually funny. I just referenced this with someone last week. I think the thing that we did wrong was we spent all this time worrying about our young starlet, and rightfully so. She was in an emotional situation. She deserved to get taken care of. But what we forgot about is we also had an actor who was doing the exact same scene.
Right.
And it's kind of like, it's going to be okay, little miss. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure we're respected. And he's sitting here like, well, I matter. I'm important too. And we completely overlooked that. And I still regret that.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. I talked with him not too long ago, and we were talking about that. And out of any, like, as a director, any like interactions I've had with actors, that's got to be in my top like 2 or 3 moments where I'm like, man, I should have handled that differently. I was so worried about her that
Yeah.
I completely ignored him and made him feel really weird.
But I took a lot from that because to this day, I still always check on the male actor after a scene like that,
Yeah.
which I never would have thought to have had that situation not occurred, which is why I said I referenced this the other day. And it was the same kind of thing, so everyone just kind of assumes, well, they're doing a scene with a pretty girl. They should be pumped, but they're still, they're bearing all, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And so as a result, whenever I'm involved in a sex scene, I check on the actress, I stop over, I check on the guy. How you
Right.
doing? You need anything? Did you feel you were taken care of? Yada, yada. And then I'll pass any concerns that I hear onto whoever might be up the chain.
Right.
But yeah, no, I appreciate that lesson. I regret that I had to learn it.
And to be fair, I think, and especially compared to some other sets I've been on, I think that we handled the situation pretty well.
Oh yeah.
My regret is that, we didn't give the equal amount of attention to both actors, or at least close to it.
Oh yeah. It was a safe place.
Yeah.
Everyone was respected. Everyone was given the space, and it was a closed set. It's just a matter of showing equal appreciation to both.
I agree. And it's something that I've also taken with me on subsequent projects. So we shot 2 cameras for most of it. Things went pretty quick. Honestly, from my memory, it was one of the more positive experiences I've had on a set.
Yeah. We almost ran out of tapes. We, back in the day, you didn't drop things on the cards where you can just go put it on a hard drive, take that card back. You had to shoot on these little DVX tapes. I think that's where we went over budget, was it was either the last day or the day before. We were like, oh wow, we went through a lot more footage than we planned.
Yeah, I did. I shot a lot. I mean, back in those days, I shot a lot, like a lot. I was basically the DP, and we would set up our lighting pretty much 360, and we were running 2 cameras, and I would just shoot and shoot and shoot, and we would just keep going. I mean, we would run those tapes out on a take sometimes.
And I got to say, it's a testament, because you got to remember, we didn't really have an AD.
No, we did not.
We were our AD. So there was no one keeping us on schedule other than us.
Right.
And then B, we were shooting 10, 15, sometimes 20 pages a day. And yet still, you managed to bang out that coverage.
Yeah.
Like at no point was it like, we'll get a wide and a wide. That's what you got. Like we had angles.
Yeah. I mean, we would almost always have 2 masters, one from each side of the room with the 2 cameras. And then depending on how many people were in the scene, and a lot of times it was just 2 people. So, the both cameras would be focused on one or the other, and we would switch off sometimes. And then, you do maybe a third pass of it where you're just kind of fishing and doing inserts and stuff. I didn't do a shot list on it or anything like that. Back in those days, I like to block the actors on set and then just, cover what I saw. For the most part on that project, I think it worked out. And if I remember right, well, I mean, I know we didn't, because we didn't have the leeway to. We had 5 days to shoot at the house. We shot it in 5 days. Like I remember the very last day running over in time. I think this was the most I've ever went over on a feature I directed. Like I think we were something like 16 or 18 hours, like, because we had to get absolutely everything on that last day.
I miss those days where 16 hours is the longest day you ever had.
Yeah.
If you were to go back in my history, I've got a 35-hour workday.
Oh man. See, my whole thing on it, and even back then I felt like this, because we were doing this really self-contained movie, it was whatever, $6,000. It was like 4 or 5 crew members, and it was mostly friends. So, I mean, nobody's going to complain about going over 12, but even then, we were very conscious about trying not to go over. And for the most part, we didn't. I'm pretty sure that last day was the only one we went grievously over. But even on subsequent productions, I've always tried to hold to a 12-hour day or under. Now, shooting for some other producers now, that doesn't always work out. But on stuff that I run, like if it's over 12 hours, I start getting weird.
Well, I think the truth is, especially back then, we weren't spending a lot of money. Like a lot of these actors were working for 150 bucks, whatever, the minimum was back then.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really important to us that they knew that, no, we couldn't pay you, but we respected you. And we respected the fact that you were there working for way less than you deserved, and that they were still bringing it. And that was important to us.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of why, food had to be good, people had to be happy, and time had to be respected.
Well, let's talk just a little bit about the food now. Am I remembering this right? You did a lot of the actual cooking part of it, didn't you?
Catering by Trader Joe's. We had lasagnas, we had big pasta dishes. I think we made sandwiches. Yeah, I cooked all the meals. I don't think we went to a proper caterer once.
Yeah, he might be a mediocre producer, but he's a hell of a cook.
Oh, things and deeply complimented simultaneously. There's a reason I don't wear that hat very often though anymore.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk to you just a minute about that, if you don't mind. So, this was pretty much the beginning, and you started off on this, and you've kind of very soon after this project, you got heavy into special effects, and you've pretty much you've done predominantly special effects in movies for the past, 7 years, 8 years? And I'm not just trying to be, kiss assy here or anything, but I always thought out of every producer that I've ever worked with, and there are technical things, there's some organization things that could be better, but just as a personality, I have never worked with a producer with a personality as well suited to the job as you.
That means a great deal to me. And I agree. I had the capability to be a good producer, and I would wager I would be a much better producer today than I ever could have been back then.
I'd agree.
The two things I didn't grasp were, first of all, you have to be super organized, because the second one thing slips through a crack, it's game over.
Okay.
People think producing is one very, very difficult job. And you've heard me say this before.
Mm-hmm.
Producing is not one hard job. It's 100,000 very easy jobs. But
That's
it's
fair.
100,000 very easy jobs that are all incredibly important. And you can't let one go by. And half the time, 5 of those jobs are due at the same second. But that's my ultimate outlook on producing. At the time, I didn't understand that. And I would get really gung-ho on one thing, and I'd unifocus on that. And then I'd realize, well, crap, I didn't do the other 4 things I had to do today. And so we were behind, permits. I remember, I think this might have been a different movie. I don't think it was Trap, but we had to get a day of filming and drive down and go hunt down a permit before we could start. And that put us behind 3 hours.
Yeah. I remember that one. Yeah.
Part of that is learning. Again, I was 20 something. I was right out of school and dumb kid. I skipped all of the foundational stuff and just went straight to the top. But yeah, I do really appreciate that compliment though.
Yeah. Do you think it's something that you might look into doing in the future, or are you thinking about maybe dipping your toe back into that, or are you you're content?
I will always identify myself as being a special effects artist. I might be a special effects artist who produces.
Right.
And the problem is, a lot of the time what happens is I sign on to a project that might need a little bit of help as a special effects artist. And then by the time we wrap, all of a sudden I find out that I've got an associate or a co-producer credit. I get there and it's like, oh, you didn't file your permits yet. I mean, do you want me to help? And then the next thing I know, I've got a credit. That's how a lot of mine have happened over the years.
Right. Well, I've been on probably, I don't know, let's say a dozen sets with you. And I have seen more times than I count. I've seen you diffuse, potentially volatile situations, including the one with the wall thing that we were just talking about earlier. Like that really could have went to a head. We could have been kicked out. It was you that mediated that situation. And I've seen that same scenario play out in different ways on different sets with different people. You've always been kind of a peacemaker, mentality.
I still do. Trust me. I can think of a couple occasions just very recently where, I wore I wore the therapist hat the entire time. So,
Right.
but I enjoy that. And I think as much as I'm good at that, that's part of why I don't crave producing,
Mm.
because it's an exhausting burden to, every time I turn around, I know there's some new nightmare and I've got to drop everything I'm doing to calm down two very angry people.
Mm.
And it's almost always justifiable anger because the film set's at a highly
Oh yeah.
emotional place. So it's not like people are just throwing temper tantrums for the sake of temper tantrums, but it's stressful.
Mm-hmm.
The prop master should have brought the fake knife. No, the special effects guy should have brought that. No, the art department should have. Well, we don't have it. What do we do? How do we solve this problem? It's daunting, although I have to be honest. I kind of miss it. And as I've gotten a little bit older and I think a little more organized, I have been thinking about, jumping back in.
Yeah. If you ever do, give me a call, because I would have you producing on any set I was on.
All right. Well, maybe sometime this week we'll have a separate, non-publicized conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great. So takeaways from Trap. Like, do you remember it fondly?
I do remember it very fondly. That was my entry into this world. And, if it had gone differently, I would not be doing this for a living. I developed my passion and my love for this industry on that set because I had no interest in this before. I think the most important thing I learned on that set is for everyone who says you have to wait until you have the money, you have to wait until you have the crew, you have to wait till you have, and I mean, obviously to some degree, you got to have a team, you got to have some budget, but if you wait for perfect, you'll always wait. There's a fragile line between jumping in irresponsibly and not waiting for the inevitable.
Right.
But I think that lesson and just the fact that, I was capable of it, because I honestly, I didn't know that I could be a quote unquote authority figure. I was always kind of submissive. I didn't know that I could create that kind of art, that's pseudo or kudos to you. And there was a lot of self growth on that set. And technically, there was a lot of firsts for me, and that was a big learning experience. It was the first time I ever saw a rough cut.
I don't even, do you remember anything about that? I really don't remember any of the post process. I mean, I cut the thing from beginning to end and I don't remember.
It was pretty long, but what it was scary because I had never seen a rough cut before. Rough cuts don't look like the movies you see when you go to the theater.
Right.
So, ooh, this is what we made.
Like color not matching, sound not matching, like kind of awkward tape. Yeah.
And then I remember the moment when I got to see it made right and how exciting that was.
Right.
A lot of exciting growth, a lot of experience, a lot of friends that I still have to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, there was definitely some stress here and there, but I don't remember any negative. I didn't hold on to any negative feedback.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. It's in my top 2, maybe 3 movies that I've ever worked on, as far as, being proud of the final and enjoying the process of it. Like, I think process wise, it's probably my favorite. Like, I've never, like, even on such a small budget, I had never had like that much rehearsal time. Like I was able to get all 3 of the lead actors like into a rehearsal space. And I think I spent 2 or 3 days with them, like collectively.
Crazy to think about now when you're like,
I know. And and then on set, just the relationship with the actors. And I think because it was such a small cast, like I was really able to push performances in ways that sometimes you can't on, productions that small with that tightest shooting schedule. So I remember really liking that. And honestly, it's one of the best like on-set sound jobs that I've ever had on a low-budget movie. I mean, I've had good sound on some subsequent movies, but I mean, Guillermo, his sound, like I had to do almost no cleanup on it and almost no ADR.
Which is crazy because I don't know if you remember this, but we were filming in Hollywood the weekend we lost Michael Jackson.
Yes, and the choppers, like constant.
A lot of helicopters and stuff. And the fact that, I mean, we'd sit there for 10 minutes at a time with him holding the boom, waiting for clean sound. But the fact that there is any usable audio from those 2 days at all is amazing.
Yeah, and the other thing about it is, regardless of the Michael Jackson thing, I mean, we were in downtown Hollywood, so I mean, it's in the city, and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be taking place in this like rural like place in the mountains, and you cannot tell.
And we're not talking like hardcore boom mic from today where they have all the noise canceling stuff in there. I mean, there was
Oh yeah,
some level of directional, control, but this is a decade ago. So
yeah, and I didn't have nearly the post cleanup
yeah.
capabilities. I mean, it existed, but not in like a regular nonlinear editing system. Like if you have Premiere Pro today, I mean,
Oh,
the audio cleanup capabilities are incredible. But back then, not so much. I had an EQ and I had to kind of figure out how to work it, and I wasn't great at it. Luckily, the source sound was good.
funny because I still enjoy that movie even now. I watched it maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, I watched it about 3 weeks ago because I did another set down with Alonzo, and
Oh,
we were mostly talking about Monsters in the Woods and Put a Ring on It. But we talked a little bit about Trap. I'll probably put some of that in this as well. But anyway, Robert, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It was good reminiscing. And
absolutely, man.
is there anything you wanted to plug or?
No, I mean I'm Bravo FX. My website's www.bravofx.net. I do practical special effects these days. I do produce, but not often. And I still love the film industry. So
Awesome.
thank you for bringing me into it.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, you take care, buddy.
So Trap was shot for around $4,000, and at the time, no distributor wanted it. After about 6 months of trying, I uploaded it onto Prime Video Direct. For several months after that, maybe even a year, it really didn't earn much. It was making like $5 a month, something like that. And I eventually just kind of forgot about it. Then one day I woke up and out of nowhere, it had soared up to like $1,200 a month. To this day, I don't know what caused this bump. I was doing no new promotion for it, no big movie of mine had just been released, nothing. I just chalked it up to an algorithmic fluke, but it held there for several months. It was through this that I first realized that self distribution could be a viable option. Now, over the years, the movie's fallen back off, it's maybe come back up a little bit, back and forth, but with some new concentrated promotion, I've been able to raise the numbers pretty steadily over the last year. It's not exactly one of my biggest earners, but it's doing consistent sales. Moral of the story is this: never give up on an old title. You never know when it's going to come back around. If you're digging my stuff, please subscribe and hit that little bell notification thingy down there. Also, if you'd like to help me increase the frequency and the quality of these videos, consider supporting me on Patreon. But whatever you do, keep making movies.